Welcome to the Forecast, a Fortify Rise podcast.
Thailand, with domestic violence, it's one of the most pervasive form of gender-based violence.
At some point, you're like, okay, I have this courage to tell the people now what happened to me, and then you go to the police station, and then they just say, well, it's your husband, or well, it's your parents, you should listen to them.
It's a human rights violation, and the state has an obligation to prevent, to protect survivors of domestic violence.
Hello, welcome to the Forecast. I'm World Wirada Salim, a multimedia associate at Fortify Rights. Approximately 1 in 6 Thai women have experienced domestic violence in their lifetime. And this is just official statistics. And I'm sure that many of us know that this issue is very much known for being underreported. In March 2025, Fortify Rights published a report about the lack of access to justice and remedies for women survivors of domestic violence in Thailand. And joining me today is my dear colleague, Mukdapha Yangyem Paradon, the lead researcher of this report. Muk, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me here today.
Muk, I have read some of the testimonies in the report, and they are not easy stories to listen to, let alone sitting there with the survivors, listening to what they were going through. So I just want to take a little bit of time here to acknowledge that and how many stories can be very familiar, considering that we are from Thailand. Could you tell us a little bit why Thailand should pay attention to its domestic violence issues and how it has led you to this research?
As you've already mentioned, the statistics, Thailand, with domestic violence, it's one of the most pervasive form of gender-based violence in Thai society. Whenever I, bring up this issue when talking to, civil society actors or the government officials, I always tell them that it's one of the, epidemic, like one of the pandemic that's been plaguing the Thai society for many, many years. But it's been one of the most silenced issue in a way. Most of it stems from a very traditional and cultural thinking in Thai society that places a premium on the family value, on privacy, on keeping the problems within the household, which means that domestic violence is not something that people talk widely, especially for survivors. This cultural beliefs becomes a stigmatization that bars them away from accessing justice, from reaching out, from seeking help, which means that underreporting, as you have mentioned, has always been an issue for women survivors of domestic violence in Thailand, who when they are reaching out or when they try to reach out, there's already stigmatization, there's already fear of retaliation, there's already fear of being abused more that waits for them there already, even just when they decided to speak up. So I think these are the scenarios that we have to admit that we are living in. It's the atmosphere of fear, of a bit hopelessness, and mostly of silence that the women in Thailand are suffering at the moment.
Listening to you, I think we can dive to the findings. What are the findings that you would like to share with our listeners today?
So we looked at a lack of access to justice and remedies for women survivors in Thailand. So we try to pinpoint, the touch points or first responders of domestic violence when a case happened or an incident happens. So who are the frontliners and which governmental agencies take care these issues of domestic violence. So we looked at the One Stop Crisis Center, which is operated by the Ministry of Social Development and Human Security. That's one thing. We also looked at the Royal Thai Police. The police officers would be one of the first ones who were reported of an incident when domestic violence happened. We also look at how the court functions, how the court operates. When they receive complaint of domestic violence from either from the police or from CSOs working, and we try to map out what are the gaps that becomes a challenge for survivors to reach out, to access, to gain justice. There's a lot of things that still remains challenges or a gap in the justice system and in the system that they're supposed to be helping survivors. Whether it's a lack of proper understanding among officers, whether it's doctors, police, legal officers, prosecutors, those who would have to be working as a multidisciplinary team, to help cases like domestic violence cases, a lack of proper understanding, whether it's within the issue of domestic violence itself or how to use the law on the implementation of the law itself. There's also a victim blaming attitude among officers, among those who have to be first responders to domestic violence cases that happen with survivors. These are the things that I think is a systematic, very institutional problem that lies really, it lies with the law itself, yes, it lies with the implementation of the laws, and it lies with the attitudes of the people. So the work that we need to be working on it to ensure access to justice and remedies is we try to tackle these systematic gaps that still persist and bar survivors from reaching out to justice.
If you would touch upon the law a little bit, like the Thai domestic violence law, in the context of international law, how progressive or backward is Thailand?
We have a very, complex, confusing development of laws that governs issue of domestic violence in Thailand. So in 2007, Thailand enacted Domestic Violence Victim Protection Act. So that's a law that comes out to basically say that this form of violence, this form of domestic violence, differs from other kinds of violence. But in 2019, there's another confusing development happening with when the military government at that time passed another law, which is called Protection and Development of Family Institution Act. It draws domestic violence back into the household, into the private place, and whenever dispute happens, whenever domestic violence happens, then the thing that the law would be focusing would not be survivors anymore, but it would be trying to keep the family together, right? So this law is heavily criticized for it not being survivor-centered. After a while, I think actually 2 or 3 months after this law is enacted, the government published an emergency decree suspending this law. With that development happening, now Thailand has to resort back to using the Domestic Violence Victim Protection Act, the one that's been enacted before in 2007. I wanted to touch a bit upon the international framework that governs and talks about gender-based violence and domestic violence experience as well. So Thailand has ratified the CEDAW Convention, the Convention on the Elimination of all forms of discrimination against women. And in many general recommendations of CEDAW itself, for example, 19 or 35, it talks about the state's obligation to try to address the situation of domestic violence. And if the state fails to address these issues, then it will contradict the convention itself. So it's the duty of the state. It puts state as, duty bearers, as those who really have the responsibility for the domestic violence that happened to any person in the country. There has been also discussion that's going on already since the 2007 version of the law, like the first one that we have. Because even though it's to a certain extent, look at the issue of domestic violence from a survivor-centered point of view, there are still gaps within that law itself, and I think it can be solved, or it can be revised to better align with the international law, with the international practice, and also with the implementation of the law, that there are still gaps that that needs to be addressed, and I believe it's time that the Thai government really seriously look into this issue and see the implementation, what goes wrong, or anything that they can fill in the gaps, so that it really the law really becomes survivor-centered, and the implementation that comes with it too.
I think maybe we can talk a little bit more when it comes to that family value that is so embedded in the Thai society and was even implemented into the law. And maybe if you could give some example of how this, family value, and when it's used by the authorities or actors that are supposed to help domestic violence survivors, if from what you found from the talking to the people.
It's very the family values, the thinking of holding a domestic sphere together is very deeply ingrained in among the Thai general public. There is this one of the idioms, like Thai idioms, เรื่องในอย่านำออก เรื่องนอกอย่านำเข้า, right? Which translates to the things inside, like inside the house, inside. You don't go talk about it in public places.
Yes.
And the things in public place you don't bring back home. Something like that. Which actually illustrates the mindset that Thai society, like that Thai people have, that just you don't bring something that other people would find problematic, about something that's maybe like something that in your household, you don't bring those things out and you don't talk about it. It really keeps the woman silent and still staying at the house.
Yeah. And it's not helpful if, let's say, either you're a woman or, let's say, kids in the house, and then at some point you're like, okay, I have this courage to tell the people now what happened to me, and then you go to the police station and then they just say, well, it's your husband, or well, it's your parents, you should listen to them.
Exactly. There's also another survivor that I talked to. She's actually the first survivor I talked to when I started researching on this project. She experienced domestic violence from mostly the father, but also the mother as well, like her parents in the household. And then she reached out to the police in the police station near her neighborhood. And the police actually came to the scene to come to see like what happens. But when it becomes like that, it's like it goes back to the idiom again. You're drawing someone from the public sphere into the domestic sphere. And then what happened when the police arrived at the scene is the parents tried to stay cool. Nothing happened. Everything good. And they talked to the police very nicely. And then the police comes back to say to the daughter, to the survivor I talked to, that you should listen to your parents. Yeah, you should just be a good daughter. You should just stay with them, be grateful for their upbringings, of them raising you. So these kinds of mindset is also combined and make people feel like have less and less courage, have less and less intention to reach out, because they can already imagine the things that the police would say if they reach out, like it's either victim blaming or trying to educate them, with all these traditional values that has really play an important role in Thai society.
I wonder, Muk, how many cases went to the court, like made it to the court, and how difficult it is that journey before you can get the protection from the court.
From the official statistics of the Ministry of Social Development and Human Security, so the overall number of cases is say 16,000 something, right? 16,000. We don't even know that's the real number.
Yeah.
Yes, because of underreporting, right? And then if we flip the pages through the part where it says the cases that reach to the court, and then the court there's certain kind of sentencing, settlement, protection order, it's less than 200. So the number is alarming. The number is, you can see the percentage, like it's very, very little, which means that throughout their whole journey, a lot has dropped out. A lot maybe didn't even think of engaging in the process, in the justice process. There might be mediation happening, settlement outside courts, a talk to resolve these things. So I think it shows that there's really systematic gaps in how this society deals with the problem of domestic violence and how we ensure accountability of the crimes, of the violence that happened.
What are some recommendations then that you would like to share with our listeners?
Thailand is currently in the process of trying to revise the Domestic Violence Victim Protection Act, which I hope would be would be a good next step for Thailand, and the committee that's involved in drafting itself is also comprised of many civil society organizations, those service providers, those who are really working on the case. So more or less, I think we will see a better revised version of the law. But I think the things that we will need to ensure is to ensure that the details into it, the definition of domestic violence, penalties, like statute of limitations, these things aligns with best practice and international law standards. That's on legislation side. On implementation side, which can be more tricky and a bit more difficult, harder to try to for us to try to address the gaps. I think there has to be a holistic view into how we address this gap, whether it comes to having specialized training on the understanding of the law, understanding of different types of violence, signs of trauma, signs of violence, incorporate curriculum of maybe trauma-informed care into to teach the officers, whether doctors, police, or those who or social workers, psychologists, those who would be the ones that would be responding to survivors if domestic violence happens. The government could think of developing something that try to standardize when domestic violence case happen, what are the steps that officers could follow, and it would have to be gender sensitive to these guidelines. I think it would have to really look into it from a survivor-centered point of view. I hope that once we start addressing this issue seriously, the cultural mindset, the traditional attitudes and beliefs that we've already discussed, that's very deeply ingrained in Thai society, will start to change too.
What's the forecast for justice and remedies for women survivors in Thailand?
Maybe in terms of the things I want to see, the future I want to see.
Okay.
I want to see a society where women can stand up for themselves and wouldn't be afraid to reach out to seek help when domestic violence happen to them. And I also want to see a society where where we know that domestic violence is a kind of crime, is a human rights violation, and the state has an obligation to prevent, to protect survivors of domestic violence.